Hey, good morning guys, Rygo here. So, just got home from Hood and I was out there filming some park videos, hanging out with friends, living in a van, just kind of living the good life out in Hood River, Oregon for the past few weeks. And I was just working on my park riding, doing some filming, trying to progress. And I had the chance to test a new harness this year. So Matt from Majestic kind of hooked it up and he let me get my hands on one of the new stealth harnesses. So I have been riding the regular Majestic X for the last 2 years now, and finally had the chance to try the new stealth harness. So I think what I'm going to do is move it down to the lake here and set up, and we're going to do a review and comparison of these two harnesses, and I'll just share with you my thoughts on the differences between the Stealth and the Majestic X. Let's get to it. So the last couple of years I've been using pretty much exclusively the Majestic harnesses, and I crossed over from soft shell harnesses like I guess 2016 or 17 or something like that. And if you haven't tried yet, just out of the gates, definitely worth the investment. So with the softer harnesses, what happens is they tend to wear out over time. So maybe after 2 or 3 years they might start digging into your ribs. They're already flexible, so they tend to ride up a bit more. When the kite's pulling on you, they can ride up. So you might be able to get away with going with like a 120 kind of lower end baser harness, and while you're learning, that's a good way to go to keep the price down in a package. But you could really treat yourself and get a higher end harness, and this is one of the few times where going for a really premium product does make a big difference. And I've done a lot of videos where I talk about going to like a higher end control bar, and sometimes going to something a bit more pricey isn't always the right way to go, because you don't really get that much more for it. But in this case, with the hard shell harnesses, you really do. And this is for any hard shell harness. I'm not talking about just Majestic here. Majestic, Ride Engine, all of them, they're fantastic. Back to the point on these two harnesses. So I've been riding the Majestic X for a couple years now, and I've been really happy with it. So it's incredibly comfortable. They are size specific, maybe not as much as you think. I actually do bounce back and forth between the small and the medium, and I find that they both work and they both do what they're supposed to do. So they don't ride up on me, they kind of lock into my lower back, and for my body shape this particular harness works really well. And recently I had the chance to try out the Stealth harness, and you can see it looks a bit different. The inside, the padding here, quite a bit different. So it's kind of more of this rubber material, basically the same shape, same shell, I think, even, just you don't have this fabric here. You have this kind of like very open rubber material. And the big thing here is, I'll get right to it, I can't tell the difference. So on the water, these feel identical. You are not going to notice a difference going to the Stealth harness. And the big difference really here is, aside from the lighter material, is just the weight. So the Stealth, when dry, they actually are the same weight, but when you get in the water, the Majestic X will take on water, it will get heavier, and again, while you're riding, it's at your center of gravity, so it actually makes no difference for performance on the water. But when you're traveling, big difference for getting on an airline. It keeps your bag lighter, it keeps your car dry, and it's kind of just the latest and greatest thing. But the big advantage here to going for the new one is when it's wet, it weighs less. So moving on, something else as well that I've come to really appreciate is the Stealth spreader bar. So you can see that it has this nice little clam cleat here, which really helps lock down. So when you do get the harness tight, it locks it down just that much more tighter without you having to mess around with the straps here. And that's kind of nice on the water. But as well, these wings here, they look a little goofy, but what they do is when you're riding, they prevent the harness from twisting and kind of digging into your ribs. So sometimes if you're using a smaller spreader bar that doesn't have something like this, the kite can kind of pull up on it and it can distort and dig into you a little bit. Even if you are using a premium harness, if you're not using kind of a nicer spreader bar, it's really nice, but sometimes they can dig into you. but I have found that the Stealth spreader bar makes a huge difference. So while I'm not particularly privy between the two harnesses, I would ride either one happily without a problem. I would say that the Stealth spreader bar is a worthy upgrade from the clicker bar or the banana bar or whatever spreader bar you might be using. That's definitely worth the upgrade. Now, between these two, that's up to you to decide if the weight difference really matters to you or not. The Stealth is a good looking harness. I think it's a little bit better looking than the X. I like the lighter material, and I've heard some people say that maybe the Majestic X is a bit more comfortable because it is a softer padding on the inside, whereas this is kind of more rubber. That really hasn't been the case for me, but that's kind of a subjective thing. So wearing this shirtless, rash guard, wetsuit, it doesn't really matter to me. It might matter to you. It's just by feel. This is definitely a little bit softer, but this doesn't irritate me by any means, so it is very nice. And a few other things just to cover on the harness is, if you do go with a Majestic harness or a Stealth harness, for the leash attachment, you will get this little eyelet here. So this is kind of the prime place to leash in with this. Most people are using this now, whether they're doing a short leash or even the guys who are doing handle passes. This is a good way to go. But if you are a bit more old school, or maybe you want something to hold on to while you're teaching somebody, they do offer this handle pass leash back here. And you can attach that just by running this right through here. You wrap it around this buckle here and you're locked in and good to go. One note, if you are going to go with this leash system, be mindful of what leash you're using. So you can see I have a carabiner here. You don't want to use this. So kind of a mistake on my part, but if you use metal, you can kind of scratch the harness up. So you can see mine, it's brand new and I've already kind of beat it up a little bit. So big mistake not thinking about that one. But what you want to do is you just want to get a leash with like a rope and a little lark's head and just something soft so you don't scratch up your harness with a metal carabiner like that. So kind of two things to be aware of, but for most people I'd recommend just using that little eyelet and leashing to the front, unless you have a really strong preference for the handle pass leash in the back. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We're just gonna do a quick review here. If you guys have any questions on these harnesses, don't hesitate to ask. I will reply in the comments. You can reach out to the shop, but I would say about 50% of the guys there do choose the Majestic harnesses, or rather the Stealth now, but just the Mystic harnesses in general. They have been the most popular offering from our shop, and everybody's pretty stoked on them. I guess down to what my choice would be, well, I mean, I have the option to use the Stealth, so yeah, I'm gonna use the latest and greatest and the new option. If money were an issue and I was trying to save a buck, I wouldn't feel bad about getting like a closeout Majestic X. And by now we all know that these hard shell harnesses are rigid, they don't ride up, they do what they're supposed to do. So they lock into the small of your back, they're super comfortable, and they're basically the industry standard at this point. I don't think too many people are using soft shell harnesses anymore. It's either seat harness or hard shell unless you're totally new to the sport and looking for like a cheap package deal. So I guess if you just kind of have a look at the harnesses, you can see they're actually not too dissimilar. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.